So when evaluating Durkheim's research on suicide, it's worth considering the three other key studies on suicide that are available for us to look at. Douglas wrote from the interactionist approach, and his study was on the meaning of suicide. So for him, he wasn't necessarily interested in the statistical patterns on suicide, and he wasn't really interested in establishing a causal relationship between one social factor leading to increased suicide. He was more interested in what suicide meant to those that committed suicide. He argued that statistics were based on the coroner's opinion, therefore they are socially constructed. So perhaps you could consider, why might highly integrated people be less likely to be defined as a suicide? So why would people who are very well integrated into the social life have frequent contact with other people, possibly within a religious community, maybe the Catholic community? Why might they be less likely to be defined as a suicide, as someone who might be a bit of a loner? He argued that the suicide verdict is the outcome of a negotiation between the police, relatives, and the coroners. Okay, again, lots of social pressures. Why, if a Catholic relative finds a suicide note, why might they destroy the suicide note? Okay, why might they be reluctant to get the suicide verdict? Okay, there's also a lot of pressure from relatives and other social forces on the police and the coroners to maybe avoid a suicide verdict in particular countries where suicide is really frowned upon. So that might be worth considering as well. So Douglas preferred the case study approach, which is taking a very detailed look at a narrow range of suicide cases to try and uncover the true meaning of that suicide to the person. Why did they commit it? It involved looking at lots and lots of documents, court records, and trying to look at transcripts of interviews with relatives and conversations between the police and coroners. He argued that people commit suicide for 4 different reasons. Okay, so like I said, Durkheim focused on the causes of suicide, whereas Douglas looked at the reasons people commit suicide. The 4 were transforming oneself for others, achieving fellow feelings, and gaining revenge. So can you think of any examples of those 4 different types of suicide? And if you look at the next slide, Douglas's work is really useful in any question that refers to whether sociology can be a science or whether we can investigate society scientifically. Because he argued that because individuals placed different meanings on suicide, therefore there was no single social fact that could explain suicide. Like I said, you need to look at why, not just the statistics. So if we use Douglas's work and the interpretivist perspective, we can actually make a good criticism of Durkheim's study as actually being quite useless, because it doesn't actually uncover the real reasons for committing suicide. It just identifies patterns and trends across different societies. Atkinson wasn't even interested in the cause at all, but he was very interested in the social construction of the verdict. Again, he's the interactionist approach. He argued, again, statistics are socially constructed, so him and Douglas agree in that sense. And he argued we can never and ever know the real rate of suicide. Okay, we can't interview the people that committed suicide or ask them, did they mean to kill themselves, for example. It's based on the coroner's decision entirely. And like Douglas, Atkins recognised that the coroner's decision was the outcome of a social process. Okay, Atkins used a range of research methods. He observed coroners' courts, so he actually went and sat in the witness galleries of a range of coroners' courts and observed how they came to their conclusions about whether someone had committed a suicide or not. And he found that the coroner's inquest was actually based on clues from 4 key areas. The first one was the presence of a suicide note. Now, that seemed to be one of the most important factors in determining whether something was a suicide or not. Secondly, was the mode of death itself. So he found that, particularly in the British courts, they lent towards verdicts of accidental death rather than suicide. So, for example, how can you tell if someone sped and crashed their car into a wall? How can you tell if that was a suicide or accidental death? Location and circumstances were taken into account. Okay, cities versus country, the person's personal circumstances, what had led up to it, and the life history of the individual and their mental condition were seen as paramount in deciding whether something was suicide. I know I mentioned this before in the problem with relying on statistics. It found that, many more people who were young and had been involved in drugs were much more likely to be classed as suicides over middle-class people who perhaps had crashed their cars. It doesn't necessarily mean that middle-class people aren't committing suicide, it just means that they're not showing up in the official statistics. Okay? He used a range of methods, observation, listening to conversations with coroners, and he also examined court records, which would be classed as official documents, okay? So they're all very qualitative sources of information, and you might want to evaluate his research based on the positivist-interpretivist debate as well. The reason it's so useful is because he shows how Durkheim's work is questionable, as the statistics are based on a coroner's decision which is entirely socially constructed, and based on what coroners viewed as typical suicides. Now, for some reason, the next slide hasn't appeared on your PowerPoint, so I'll just talk you through it. It was the idea of, the study by Jerry Jacobs, spelled Jerry, Jacobs, and his research was predominantly on suicide notes. He gained access to these personal documents and was able to analyse 112 suicide notes and was able to classify them based on the actor's intentions. It's a really interesting bit of research. Secondary data, because they were written for some other reason, not for that the research is trying to study. Favoured by interpretivists. Why do you think the suicide notes might be considered so valid? Okay, why would they be so valid and useful? And can you make any criticisms of using suicide notes to determine why someone committed suicide? The final bit of research is Taylor. He has done the most recent study. And he carried out in-depth case studies, so again, same sort of method as Atkins, and he was very critical of other studies for ignoring para-suicides. Now, a para-suicide is someone who attempts to kill themselves and fails. He studied suicides that were people jumping in front of London tubes, so you might be able to criticise him for being geographically quite narrow, not representative. However, he was very interested in those people who survived, and when he talked to the people that survived, he found that most of these people were taking more of a gamble on whether they would kill themselves or not than a definite decision, and actually there wasn't that much intent behind many of their decisions to commit suicide. You can incorporate Durkheim and Douglas, okay? You can use the approach of Durkheim and Douglas because they don't trust suicide statistics, but doesn't really try to explain the causes of suicide either. He argued that the successful suicides can be linked to Durkheim's explanations. However, you need to look at the meanings behind them. Okay, so although Taylor did in-depth case studies, qualitative and interpretivist bit of research, he did favour some of Durkheim's explanations for suicide. Here's an example question that we're going to be looking at together in class. Have a quick read through the item, which talks about Atkinson and Durkheim's study. And the question we're going to be answering is a 15-mark question. There's a level 1 answer, level 2 answer, and level 3 is where we're all going to be aiming for. Okay, it might be worth referring some of your notes on research methods from term 6 and look at those pervert evaluation sheets that we were filling out, those big A3 pink ones. Okay, I'll see you in class year 13. Thanks.